Hey guys, how's it going? It's Brian from Breathe In, and you guys are tuning into Music Existence. By the way, I see the Jaguar in the back, is it?
Yeah,
That's a cool
yeah.
guitar.
The Jazz Master, man.
Jazz Master.
Jazz Master Jake.
Hey, I got
Yeah.
my guitars, but they're off camera. But actually, you know what? Let me see if I could.
All
My
right.
studio's a little messy, but I got my rack here.
We got
That's all.
some pre-interview guitar action.
Hell yeah! All
All
the good
right.
stuff is setting the mood.
Welcome to another instance of music existence where because of music, we exist. Today, I have with me Brian Kang, one of two guitarists of the band Breathe In, and they've just started their new journey with new vocalist Shola Aurora as of 2024, and they have this new single out called Misfortune's Hand,
Yes,
and
sir.
the video is doing the rounds currently on YouTube, gaining traction there, but very excited to have the multi-genre artist, guitarist, and pretty much everything else, Brian Kang.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, man. That was a really profound introduction, actually. I felt like moved and it was thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me and taking the time out of your day, to have me on your show.
Hell yeah, man. So, when you were learning guitar, it was all about Escape the Fate, it was all about Blackfield Brides,
Yeah.
but also, Paris and like Nocturnal Bloodlust. Paris was like kind of like that kind of reverb kind of guitar chord setting, and then Nocturnal Bloodlust was your VK sort of um trajectory with that. So how did all that factor in to your identity growing up?
Oh man, that's a really good question because the way that I've kind of seen like the different artists that I look up to are kind of like they symbolize like different phases in my guitar journey. So for me, like just like any other kid that started out, you start out with your typical like, pop punk covering like Green Day, Blink 182 songs, and then you discover like your first guitar solos with like Avenged Sevenfold and Escape the Fate and all that. So Escape the Fate was really blowing up with my time. It's strange because Escape the Fate stuff, some of it is like some of their songs are pretty easy to do, but some of them are like ridiculously hard to play. So it was kind of tough to get into that. But the one I took away something from each artist with Escape the Fate, their ex-lead guitar player Monty Money. He always prided himself of getting the screams out of his solos, how to really
Right.
articulate the notes. So I took note of that. I really got into Black Veil Brides like throughout my teenage years, and I think that band was responsible for bringing my guitar playing from just like pop punk teenager playing in like garage bands to like full on shredder.
Set the World on Fire was the
Oh
album
yeah,
that really got you going. And,
yes sir.
Jake Pitts was like your pretty much your mentor via YouTube tutorials.
Yes
He
sir.
really breaks down those solos. And it kind of gets you wondering with the composition of solos, he's actually very methodical of like where he places his hand for each of the notes, because you'd think it would just be like, okay, a couple of the notes of the solo he's paying attention, and then the rest is like not as concentrated, but each note is like extremely precise.
Yeah. And it's like, and I think that's why I really related to guitarists like Monty Money and Jake Pitts, because I always felt like guitar solos, you're essentially telling like your own mini story within the song.
Right.
So it's like those two guitar players like did an excellent job of really like picking the right notes and making sure which ones like really resonate with the song, as well as telling their own mini story that carries the momentum throughout their solos. And I think every time I write solos nowadays, like the things that I took away from those two is like treat it like you're writing your own story. Like, you have your introduction, rising action, climax, and closing. So that's how I kind of see guitar solos.
Mm-hmm. And then Paris, the honorable mention in like your top kind of albums is
Yeah.
sort of like it's not all about solos. It's about textures. Paris is all about texture. It's all about reverb. It's all about melody. It's all about chords, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
with Paris, it was I mean Lynn Gunn is a very, very talented songwriter.
Yeah.
I think she cited Circa Survive as one of her main like guitar
Yeah.
influences. And just I think the thing that really like mesmerized me about Paris was just, their approach compared to artists like, Avenged Sevenfold, Escape the Fate, Black Veil Brides. It's like totally left field where it's more about letting the notes breathe and creating an ambiance with those notes. And I think I was really drawn to that as well as like the melodic nature of the chord choices that they picked.
Yeah. Nocturnal Bloodlust, that's Visual K. I
Mm-hmm.
remember, when I was growing up as a 14-year-old in 2005, this was when YouTube was in its infancy. So this
Yeah.
is going back. So I remember Winamp had this channel called J-Pop Suki TV.
Oh my
And
goodness.
you could hear like 12012, Darren Gray, John
Yeah.
DeArc, like who else? Like Larkin Seal,
Oh, the classic, the
and
Gazette.
yeah, Oblivion Dust.
Oh my goodness.
Oh
Oblivion
man,
does some OG stuff.
yeah, like
Yeah.
super going nowhere.
Yeah. And don't forget about Hyde and
Yeah,
Vamp and all
yeah,
that stuff
Hyde.
too.
And then there's Hyde, and then there's also he did with Spread
Oh,
Beaver.
Art.
Yeah.
Yes.
Holy
Yeah.
shit, man. That's going like way back. So
Yeah.
like how did you get into Visual K just like in general? Like I remember like that's when it really kind of popped off as far as like an American understanding in like the mid 2000s when
Yeah.
you started to get like that kind of international reach.
Yeah. For me, I don't know how, I think I vaguely remember. It was okay, I think I do remember it. So I actually my first VK band that I discovered was Deer and Gray, and this was
Yeah.
like back in 2009.
Oh yeah.
I was like
So
what,
they were
12?
like probably like a decade old. So they
Yeah.
actually had like a solid foundation for like really branching out at
Yeah,
that point.
absolutely. And I think I first heard about them because I mean, a 12-year-old kid shouldn't be watching these movies, but I was like a huge Saw buff.
Yeah.
And I noticed because I used to love looking at the soundtracks and seeing what artists were on, like, the soundtrack for whatever Saw movie came out that Halloween. And I think Darren Gray was playing the closing track for Saw 3D soundtrack. And I noticed like it had the really, really long title, like Hageshi Shisa. I
Yeah.
forgot the song's name, but
Yeah.
it was that was off their album Dumb Spiro Sparrow, but that album didn't come out at the time. But I was intrigued by them.
Yeah.
And I looked into them, I saw the obscure music video and I
Oh
watched the
God.
final.
Saku,
And
remember
yeah,
that?
and I think I was really moved by the fact that their performances were so, like, they were just so locked in.
Yeah,
Like,
involved. They were
yeah,
involved, like theatric almost, but very also grotesque in like a
yeah,
very provocative way.
yeah. And I think the thing that really caught me off guard was, the first two songs I heard from them was, the one on Saw 3D and then um Obscure. And those are both very intense like songs. But
Yeah.
then I think at the time, Ouroboros was the most recent album that came out.
Right.
So the song that was on the Saw 3D soundtrack was just a standalone single at the time. And I was just so taken aback and just like amazed with how just beautiful the album Ouroboros was because it's just so like the best adjective that I could describe is it's so worldly. Like they use a lot of traditional Japanese instruments and like a lot of ambiance to create this kind of dark, unsettling, but at the same time like beautiful imagery. And I was just really impressed with that level of musicianship. But it was weird because Darren Gray, like, I don't know why, but like I never could get into their guitar stuff. I think at the time I was just so fixated on like, I gotta do the shreddy solos with Black Veil Brides and everything.
Yeah, I think because Darren Gray, when they started out in 97 and
Yeah.
continued through 98, 99, it was very chorus, like melodic guitars, like very kind
Yeah.
of guitars. And then they moved into like the 2000s, were very kind of new metal
Oh
driven,
yeah.
very like corn influenced, but also like extremely like Japanese sort
Yeah.
of dramatic, like bellowing choruses and like instant like anime opener esque
Yeah.
energy.
It was such a good combination. I think that's what really allowed them to transcend into the global audience. But
And then as far as like Nocturnal Bloodlust, that is like similar fast sort of energy, but with 7 string guitars. And that was kind of your venturing into the 7 string
oh
sort of
yeah.
territory. But the way they do it is in such a unique way because you've seen 7 string was very down tuned, almost like kind of slower music, but they
Yeah.
do it in sort of this like fast, almost kind of whimsical kind of setting, which is very unique. It's
Oh,
a very
absolutely.
Japanese thing.
Yeah, and I think you said the right adjective for that and
Yeah,
being it whimsical.
yeah,
Because I think Nocturnal Bloodlust, like I caught attention, they caught my attention like towards the end of the 2010s, so I was a little
yeah,
bit late on the train, but
yeah,
they were blowing up around like the mid 2010s, and I think that's when like Gent really started to take over.
yeah.
But like to see like this band doing like kind of just like some like deathcore, but like mixed with like super melodic guitar solos,
Super
like
like light and
yeah.
fluffy.
Yeah, and like their ex-lead guitar player Kazki,
Yeah,
and like he's like a continuation, like the same kind of preference that I had for guitarists like Monty Money and Jake Pitts, where he had these super melodic guitar solos that were both like flashy and impressive, but like he made the guitar sing. And I think I heard the Desperate solo for the first time, and when he was doing like the two-hand tapping sequence or whatever it was, like that just won me over, and I was like, I have to get a 7 string.
yeah. And so like I was browsing your page and I saw that you did a playthrough of the montage in Smiling Friends.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, shit, like that's interesting because that montage is like one of the most extreme montages I've heard. You're familiar with like Scarface and like Gonna Fly Now, very kind of retroactive, upbeat, like push it to the limit
Yeah.
and all that, and gonna fly now, and like
Yeah.
they kind of have this kind of bounce to them, but like, did you ever get into the show and then like, did you like, were you driven to just do the playthrough kind of right away?
Dude, it's so funny because me and my girlfriend are huge Smiling Friends fans, and like we
Yeah.
watch like every Sunday when a new episode comes out.
Wow.
But the Schmaloogle episode, we were just in tears the entire time, and we noticed during the training montage, like there, like it's like kind of like the song they use is, I'm sure it's just like a generic version of like an MMA theme or like
Yeah.
somebody said it sounded like a Tool song, but obviously like their own generic version of it.
Yeah.
And I was just randomly like, I was in bed at 2 in the morning, and I'm like, I should make a cover of it. So I got out of bed and just within 10 minutes just eared the song out and then just like did that, and that's how it came about.
Yeah, and like as far as like multi genres, like you said you would like to join like a more pop rock alternative band just to wear your Ibanez very low. But it really speaks to, you know, I don't want to say virtuosity because that's too cheesy, but just the like you don't like turn your nose up at other genres despite really getting into metal because a lot of metalheads, they kind of like I'm too good for grunge, or oh, I'm too good for this like punk and all of that. But and someone mentioned the band Special Hug, which is like fairy grunge,
Yeah.
and that made me think of the band called from the 90s called Cub. They had this song called My Chinchilla. You could look it up after our
Nice.
interview. But I swear to God, one of the posts defined their music as cuddlecore.
I'm actually really good friends with two of the members of Special Hug.
Yeah,
They're actually friends from high school, which is actually really, really funny. We just kept in touch like after, and they come out and support like the Breathe In shows and everything. But that post was like, like how you mentioned with like some metalheads, like they're very, very tunnel vision when it comes to their genre. Like, I want to do this and only this. But, there's special nuances and there's special areas too when it comes
yeah,
to other genres that you can't really do with I mean, you can to an extent, but especially me being the lead guitarist to Breathe In and very like involved with my lead work, a lot of times I'm kind of just like focused on my fretboard, and just like making sure I nail the notes. So there are moments where I just kind of want to let loose and just like, especially for a genre, and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn or anything like that,
yeah.
but like, a genre that's not as technically difficult, like,
Yeah.
pop punk, you never forget your roots. Uh, Pop punk, like alternative rock, like I would just love to be in a band or a side project or something where I can just kind of let loose and just have fun and just, wear my Les Paul super low and just have a good time on
Yeah,
stage.
and it goes both ways, Sometimes you crave that technicality of like doing solos, and sometimes you just want to like lay it all back and like just bash it out.
Exactly.
Going back to the expansion of the influence of Visual K, you were in Skiver, and I was like kind of taken aback because I'm like, okay, now Americans are becoming influenced by this. I've dreamed of a time, when I was a teenager back in 2005, 2006. Like, I wonder when Americans or people from the UK are gonna like finally get around to this. But Skiver is like one of those bands where it happened, and they have their own kind of unique synthesizer sort of style. So, how did
Yeah.
Skiver come about?
So Skiver came about when so it's a bit of a story because like I just
Okay.
started doing YouTube like towards the end of my high school years.
Yeah.
And I did some covers of fairly prominent bands that were coming out of New Jersey. And my former bandmate, and he's still like one of my best friends till
Cool.
this day, Felix Skiver, he actually reached out to me on Facebook Messenger and was like, hey, like, I saw your covers on YouTube. Like, you're an amazing guitar player. Like, I would love to have you join my project. And dumbass me first was like, no, I appreciate the offer, but I'm
I
going to college
appreciate
next
the
year.
offer,
Like I
but
gotta focus on my studies and
I
everything.
have to focus on my.
I
And then
know,
you were
right?
like, oh shit, like this
But
is actually pretty good.
yeah, I ended up backtracking on it because I was like, honestly, like, because Felix ended up telling me he was also, a student, like he went to college too as well. So I was like, oh well, if he could do it, then there's no reason I can't do it. So I was like, fuck it, let me join.
Yeah,
And
because I think it was like a similar situation with Rat. Either like Jakey Lee or Warren DeMartini was like, well, if I just finish this semester, and it's like, no, you're going on the road now.
yeah, but so that's kind of how it formed, and it was just mostly me and Felix for I think a pretty decent amount of time, and then we solidified our lineup. And we had kind of this fusion of like Felix is really into like VK, and he's also really into like uh just general J rock. Like I think his biggest inspiration is Hyde,
Yeah,
and he's very good when it comes to visuals. And I think we created a sound that was very similar to like Vamps, but there's a little bit more of like a hard rock vibe to it with like
yeah.
the more intricate guitar solos. And it was a really fun band to be a part of, and I'm glad and honored to be a part have that as a part of my history. Unfortunately, I did leave because another opportunity popped up with Another Day's Armor, and it was like one of those like, do I take this opportunity or do I not take this opportunity?
Another Day's Armor. Nick Palma's in that band, right?
Yeah, and he's also one of my best friends, and
I
he
interviewed
actually.
him way back.
Oh hell yeah,
Yeah,
dude!
yeah, yeah. Gotta
Me and
show him this. You gotta show him this when it's
yeah,
up.
absolutely, dude. It's crazy because I always go to Nick's house every now and then, and we just like shoot the shit and hang out. And actually, a fun fact: Nick has engineered the guitars for Breathe In's last two singles.
Wow.
Yeah,
What an honor, man. What an honor.
absolutely.
What a way to like pay it forward.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a talented dude, and like, I can't speak too much on this, but he has something cooking. So I will say be on the lookout of Nick's stuff. He's definitely got something in the works, and I think be it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, if you want to spread the word of this interview, get him going, and if he wants to come back on to like have a little music existence exclusive, like
Absolutely.
that would be that would be amazing. So like Another Day's Armor. So from Skiver, you were in Another Day's Armor, and then did that lead eventually to Breathe In?
Kind of in like a sort of indirect way. Like it wasn't immediate. So what happened was, unfortunately during the pandemic, like Another
Yeah.
Day's Armor, we were like, it was going very good, and then everything came to a screeching halt. Our singer at the time parted ways with us, and we tried to audition for a new singer, but it just wasn't happening. So Another Day's Armor ended up dissolving during that time, and I did a lot of soul searching and everything, and out of that time with Another Day's Armor, and when we did the vocal auditions, Breathin's former lead vocalist, I actually found him on YouTube, and I tried to talk him into doing an audition for Another Day's Armor. And after that, we just kind of kept in touch. So though that was kind of like the roots of Breathe In. So we kind of
Right.
just started tossing around demos and everything. Um, and then gradually just over that time, like just the pieces slowly started coming together. Like I met our drummer Paul at the gym, surprisingly, of all places.
Yeah, I remember
Uh,
it. Yeah, the interview you said it all kind of like came together in like a fluid motion, and like
yeah.
I was wondering about that gym scenario. Were you kind of on the lookout specifically because when you're at a place like the gym, you're probably like, are there any musicians here that I know of that I like necessarily care about?
No, I mean, I was just there to work out more than anything. But
Oh, God. As
what
anyone would
happened?
be.
Yeah, but what happened was, an old high school buddy of mine, turns out he worked at the same gym, and he saw me and he was like, "Yeah, come join like our workouts." And in his group was Paul, and my buddy is a cinematographer as well, and he's worked with Paul through like different film projects.
Yeah,
So
because I know that that Paul is like he has a videographer background. He's also an illustrator. He does like
yeah,
the album art. So like it's cool how that all kind of synchronized that way.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy too, because like when I first met Paul, like I was so intimidated by him. And when you're in the gym, like you're focused. You don't see like the other side of like
No,
somebody. So Paul, like he's like, yeah, this is my buddy Paul. He's a drummer. Like I told him that you play music and everything. I see this like massive, like Viking looking dude that looks like he's
his
gonna
beard,
murder
his
me.
beard
Yeah,
is.
because like Paul, like the reality is Paul is a huge teddy bear. But like when you first meet him, and like if he's doing something serious like working out, like he looks like you do not want
He
to fuck
looks
with.
like he'd be from like Europe, being like, "You must be Brian."
Yeah. And the crazy thing is too, like after working out with Paul, because like the guys in that group
Oh,
were a
you
little
ended
like,
up working out together. That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
and I ended up gaining like 20 pounds of muscle, which is crazy. Like I used to be bone skinny, and then I'm now like kind of like more on
So
like
what
a.
did he put you onto exactly? Like, was it all like more reps, or was it like just
It
like
was it was like supersetting a lot of the workouts and just doing heavier weights. Because obviously, when you work out by yourself, you don't really have anybody spotting you. But like when you
yeah,
work out as a group, like you have people spotting you, but at the same time, you don't want to be too far behind from anybody. So you kind of push yourself to do like heavier weights and everything. And those guys, man, when they would do their workouts, like this is one of the things that absolutely killed me. So like the leg press machine, right?
right, yeah,
So we would do it would be nonstop reps. Basically, you would do. a set of 8 of just regular leg presses, and then after that you would do one leg only of the leg presses, another 8. Then you switch the leg, then you do that one, and then you do what's it called? What are they called? You do the calf raises on the leg press to finish it off. So you're doing
Oh,
a total of like 32 reps, like in succession without any breaks. And like those guys, like I think Paul could do at least like 3 plates on
how
like
long
one.
did it last? Was it like for an hour or something of
I
like
was
just
like close to two
nonstop?
hours.
2 hours
I mean, then again,
nonstop.
too, it was
God
like four
damn.
four people like cycling through the workout. So,
Okay.
obviously we had a lot of ground to
Was it
cover.
broken
But
up or?
yeah, I mean, no, I think that's kind of why it was slow because we kind of we did everything together like one at a time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, he whipped me into shape. But going back into the breathe in territory, I think at the time, like I had drummers like, "Oh, maybe I should ask this guy. I had this guy in mind, but nothing was concrete. Um, After one of the workouts, like we went to dinner somewhere, and Paul and I just nerded out about drum kits and like like just drum stuff for like a whole hour. And
Yeah.
then he told me about his videography thing and, his creative background. And it's just, especially nowadays with how expensive music is, it's just something that would be very advantageous for the project if we
Right.
had something to do that in house. And Paul's very passionate about that. So when we did like our debut, like he really blew us out of the water with like, how he did the music videos, the photo shoots, and like even the album or the single artwork.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, it speaks to a level of like, I think it's like synesthetic. I've noticed a lot of people I've interviewed have some sort of synesthetic sort of tendencies with how their brain works. Like when they create album art or they create songs, they think of the album art in terms of like representing a few different sets of colors. They see
Yeah.
music in color.
And you know what's even crazier about that?
Yeah.
I think Paul is colorblind.
Oh
I don't know
wow.
exactly to what extent but he did mention he is colorblind.
That's
So it's
that's
even
a
crazier.
that's a strange irony because in terms of like the single like Fallujah and
Yeah.
painting that flower, that is extremely color specific. Like, come on.
Yeah. It's like a very like kind of like Beethoven-esque kind of thing, but it's like certain I know certain colors he can see, but certain
Yeah.
ones he can't. When we
Yeah.
did the Fallujah lyric video, he like did some of the words in like this nice like electric blue originally in one of the drafts, and we're like, um, the majority were like, honestly, like I think the blue kind of clashes, and he's like, "What are you talking about? It's white." And I'm like, "No, it's blue." We're
Oh.
like, dude, it's like blue, and we are like, "No, no, no, no!" Like in all seriousness, like it's like a cyan, like electric blue, and he's like, "Oh shit, guys! Like by the like I'm by the way, like I'm colorblind to an extent of like certain colors I can't see, but like it was meant to be white." It was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that." So
Oh wow. Wow.
yeah,
So that's really cool. And so like when it comes to breathe in, like you guys were all sort of coming together as the songs were germinating.
yeah.
And so White Flag, you mentioned the original singer. I mean, how did that uh, turn out with the original version of White Flag?
I think it was so both, Shola and our previous
Yeah.
singer, like it really did reflect a different angle of or identity of what Breathin' was versus what Breathin' is now. Um, I think originally when we had the old singer, we were trying to throw in a little bit more like kind of like rapped vocals, like a little bit like what's the band called? Like Sleep Theory, Fame on Fire, like that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Um, and our image was a little bit more straightforward. Like we weren't as heavy into the visuals and everything. It was just more of like a sonic assault. But then what had happened was with our previous singer, um, it was just a lot of logistical errors or logistical issues that were coming up because he was, from Louisiana or not Louisiana. I'm sorry, he's from Arkansas. And eventually, like when it came to us like moving forward with more work, like, we wanted to film more music videos, we wanted to record more. It just became a lot harder to do. And not just that, but he
That
was,
lack of like proximity, right?
yeah, the lack of proximity really started to show its cracks. And he was also entering a career path, or he was going to start going into a career path, which would have required a lot of his time. And he would have been like kind of AWOL with a lot of the responsibilities of the band. And not just that, but like because of a lot of other things, like, and I say this in the most respectful way, like he was kind of not really like carrying out like the expectations and like the responsibilities that we needed him to do. So we kind of came to a conclusive decision, like honestly, like this isn't going to work. So
Right.
we ended up parting ways with our old singer.
Oh man.
And yeah, I mean, we still talk, like, we are on good terms and everything, and like we hashed it out and everything. So everything's all good, and he still supports us, all that, and I still support him in what he does. But where Shola comes into the picture is that one of the first people that was brought up by Rob was Shola.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Rob knew Shola Aurora, and I correct myself, Aurora. I emphasize Aurora because I was tongue tied in my intro. I said Aora. What the hell? But Shola. So you continued with Shola after White Flag.
Actually, it was after Machine we
Okay, so
considered.
Machine, so White Flag and Machine you did with the original singer,
Yes.
and then White Flag with Shola was kind of like the rebrand of like, okay,
Yes.
we're starting anew with Shola.
Yeah.
So, so what did Shola bring to White Flag in 2024?
Yeah. So Shola, I mean, and again, this is not to knock on anybody's abilities. Like our previous singer was, he was good at what he did, but I think the style of music that we were playing just was not in his ballpark. Like we were kind of, we were a lot heavier. Like he's very into like Breaking Benjamin and all that kind of stuff. So he's more of a radio rock kind of guy. And I think we ended up putting him in a situation where on paper we wanted to really like do like the rap vocals with like the radio rock kind of choruses on top, but it didn't really like he wasn't really able to bring it out to the fullest ability. But with Shola has been, he's been in Solar Door, and then he's had a solo career for over a decade. He is a master at his craft. Like he knows his techniques and everything. So he brought the fury and just the emotional edge that White Flag really needed and just brought it out to its fullest potential. And not just that, but out of the entire band, like Shola is a visual K savant.
Oh
So
wow. So he
he's
is well versed on like
oh yeah.
probably like Buck Tick and
Oh
Malice
yeah.
Miser
Yeah.
and like the old guard of like VK.
Yeah, I mean his number one idol when it came to singing or his inspiration or motivation and like his inspiration is Gawked.
Okay, got yeah.
Yeah. So like you know, I think one of the things he brought to the table when we invited him to join the band was he wanted to have a much more elevated image. So we really stepped up on the visual department after
Right.
he joined. And the other thing was too is on our end, it was like we invited Shola, but it was more of a 2-for-1 deal because Topeng, our other guitar player,
Right.
he has been, with Shola since the Solar Door days in the, late 2010s or late
Yeah.
2000s, I'm sorry. And he also was his go-to guitar player and helped him write guitar parts for his solo career. So those two are like meat and potatoes,
Wow, like small world, how it's
Yeah.
all connected.
Yeah, and I mean, like we've been friends, like me, Rob, Tope, and Shola. We've been friends because we're all involved in like the same scene and everything. So actually, I reached out to Topeng first,
Wow.
uh, and was like, because I wanted to. Shola's a very, very like he's a guy that knows exactly what he wants, and he's a straight shooter. So he's not the type of person to like bullshit around. Like he'll tell you yes or he'll tell you no. So I really wanted to win him over. And so I approached Topeng first, and Topeng was down to join, and he was all about it. So I kind of used Topeng as a bargaining chip to get
Oh
Shola.
man.
But honestly, it makes perfect sense.
After White Flag with Shola is Fallujah. Now,
Yeah.
how did you really kind of lean into like the new era of what you were gonna do these days?
So it's actually a pretty interesting experience so far because obviously Shola and so the way we look at it is that there's Shola and Topeng's camp, and then there's me, Rob, and Paul, right? Obviously, we have very different writing styles. So it's kind of this honeymoon phase where we kind of had to get acclimated and like, break the ice and learn how to work together and everything. So Fallujah was actually a demo from Shola's side. Him and
Okay.
Topeng had worked on it years ago. They wanted to bring that to the table as a potential next single, as like a strong introduction to, Shola and Topeng, because obviously we want them, new singer, new guitarist, like we really want them to have spotlight there. Um, so what we ended up doing was the original demo. We liked it, we saw the vision, but there were certain things that it needed to breathe in sauce. So what we ended up doing was I ended up uh, adding a lot more like pizzazz to the guitar riffs to make them a little bit more involved in the verses, some
Yeah.
harmonies. Paul, he's a huge classic metal guy, so he loves like his rhythms with like the ride and everything
Yeah.
like that. And we actually ended up bumping the song 5 beats faster than the original.
Wow.
Because, again, too, like the momentum and the energy is a huge aspect with Breathe In. And like, at least for me personally, I can't speak for the rest of the band, but like, I
No,
really have to feel it, you
you
know?
do have a point because a few sort of beats slower and it sounds sort of stagnant, but it
Yeah,
just needs like a little bit, needs to be like just a little bit faster, for the energy to be on point all the way through.
absolutely. And I think a key thing too, and we still kind of maintain this throughout till this day, is no matter what Shola and Topeng bring to the table, if I put my hand on it, like on a creative aspect, I want to make sure that their original vision is intact as much as possible in the final product. I don't want to, I'm not here to overwrite what they wrote. Like, I'm not here to be like, oh, well, this is good, but it could be better in this way. Like, I want to make sure, like, what Paul adds, it's strengthening the vision, not like overriding it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so like you're a contributor, you know,
Yes.
through and through, but just not like that intimate of a contributor as far as like really like saying like, well, kind of like really asserting yourself into the process. You
Yeah,
just
because it's
kind of
like,
offer something, leave it there, and then let's say, and then, you exercise a bit of patience in saying like, let's see where this goes.
yes, because it's like the best way we like to look at it is we're all chefs in a kitchen, And now that we have Shola and Topeng, these are some new chefs with new dishes and ingredients and ideas. So
Yeah.
it's like we want to be able to let them, do their thing, and it's the same vice versa. The demos and ideas that I write or what Paul writes and everything. We always make sure like, hey, this is the vibe that we're trying to go for. Shola will do his best to add the vocals to really bring it out. And with Misfortune's Hand too, Topeng actually changed a lot of the chord choices and chord progressions to create a much brighter and a much smoother. I guess you could say much smoother passages when it comes to certain things that like even I wouldn't have thought of like originally. Like even something like going into like the breakdown, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Originally, I had written it as an ascending chord pattern, but Topeng was like, it's a little bit too optimistic sounding, and this is kind of a
Yeah.
darker song. So he changed it to a descending pattern, and that actually ended up working to the song's favor.
Yeah, because Misfortune's Hand, I mean, you're talking about a lot more subtle changes because you don't like, that's the thing. Like, you really have to balance everything out, but not make like the influences so stark and so apparent where everyone immediately jumps on the train of like they're trying to sound like this band or they're trying to sound
Yeah,
like this band because again like it has like we mentioned about Nocturnal Bloodlust, it carries over a bit of Through the Darkness, a kind of like whimsicality,
yeah,
in certain parts of Misfortune's Hand is supposed to be like a pretty like depressing, like down on your up kind of
yeah.
song, but it still has this like sort of sense of like adventure in it.
Yeah, I mean the best way that we likened it to, and especially with Shola's writing, is it's like it's basically like the story of a warrior that literally has nothing to lose. He lost
Yeah.
everything and he's just going out like just blades a blazing, and like he's just kind of he has this little glimmer of hope, but it's like kind of like in like he's just so deep in the tunnel, like the dark tunnel and everything.
Yeah.
So I
And
feel
you
like
can hear that hope
yeah.
sort of bounce through, you know?
Yeah.
As
And like
this,
the verses are so visceral, and I think
yeah.
Shola did a great job at like
Yeah,
portraying
yeah, yeah. They're
mental
shorter.
here.
They're shorter too. Like
Yeah,
comparatively, like he really just wants to like get like it's like having like a sample of something. You know, like how they have like samples of food, like
yeah,
just the right amount of meat, just the right amount of tenderness. You don't want to
yes,
like kind
sir.
of overexert yourself. I think that's kind of unique about Misfortune's Hands because the verses are like very short
Yeah,
almost like comparatively. Usually, you know, you have all these like flowery kind of poems, and then the chorus is like, you know, super short, you know, just like a line or two there. But in Misfortune's Hand, like the verses, like kind of, you know, are like straight to the point. Like
yeah,
you don't really see that, like, or you don't really hear that, I should say, in like a lot of modern kind of contexts.
yeah. I mean, like we said too, with like the context of the song, like we every form of delivery, whether it's the lyrics, like how long each part is, like I think it really plays a part into that final delivery. Like you said, it's like almost like when it comes to the meat, like the right tenderness, how much seasoning you're putting on it, you
Yeah,
know?
and
Yeah.
and in the context of like full length material, do you want to explore it like in like a fuller context with like songs like centered around those themes, or are you just like sticking with singles at this point?
I mean, eventually we want to do like a full length. It's just, the nature of the industry at the moment,
Yeah,
especially for bands starting out. It's just more feasible to put out single by single. But the way we look at it too is like,
because I know you love albums.
oh
You're
man,
like an
yeah.
albums guy.
Yeah,
You,
I love albums, but even then, the way I look at our singles too is it's almost like for the year, let's say, right? If we have a roadmap of let's say four singles, I view it as like a multi-course dinner. You
yeah,
have like this dish early in the year, this dish in the middle of the year, this dish a little later on, and then finally you have your dessert to close it off. So we still try to kind of maintain that approach too, and even with the songs too, like we try not to be very, very like we don't want to be formulaic too much, like only
yeah.
where it really matters, but we do open ourselves to a lot of experimentation. Even like I don't want to give too much away, but we're already working on the next single, and it's actually it's a ballad, and
Okay,
it's like
yeah.
a 5 to 6 minute song. So we always want to make sure that we have a lot of diversity in our sound.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Like, your songs are inevitably gonna be on like a music streaming playlist anyway, so people are
Yeah.
going to kind of surmise that they could be part of an album if if they wanted to, but you know, by the same token, like you guys are just like you're set on like an album, but at the same time, like you said, you want to have like we were talking about that the food analogy, have
Yeah.
it have the singles set as like multiple courses that would sufficiently like fill the listeners up for the time being. It's
Yeah.
like a band who, you know, doesn't put out albums that often or even doesn't play live that often. It kind of creates like a sense of mystery, and it pushes listeners, I think, to develop more patience, you know, because if
Yes.
they're really in for the long haul of a band, um, you know, they got to do it because, like, let's face it, there's no longevity nowadays. Like when I was talking to a publicist that I did an interview with,
Hmm.
um, she was saying 6 months after a single is promoted, there's not much we could do. But you saw back in the 90s, sometimes it took songs like a couple of years to get popular. Like sometimes on its initial run, it's a flop. And then a year later, or like 2 years later, it's like, oh shit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, that's and I think to an extent that still happens to this day
Yeah,
because like between our last single Fallujah and Misfortune's Hand, like we were kind of uh, I don't want to say behind schedule, but
yeah,
like we were like, in the middle of writing a lot of songs and like kind of like, getting them recorded and all that. So like we didn't really have like a definitive game plan because we were also like we got thrown into the show opening for Jaluka and then, other show opportunities pop up and stuff, but it kind of created a disjointed release. So for Fallujah, we kind of essentially milked that song out for 7 months, but literally like over that 7 month period, like our growth and like the listeners for that song and like new fans on like TikTok and Instagram, like it grew over those months. Like it towards the end, like around the 6 to 7 month like period, we really got a lot of new fans from that. So
yeah,
like you said too, like you never know about the longevity of a song. Like I just feel like again too, it's just the instant gratification of everything because of social media that it's also reflected in like the way that bands, musicians, labels, and everything kind of form their business models around nowadays.
yeah. And like any song could really get popular. Like for all you know, like White Flag can get a second wind.
Yeah, out of
Like
nowhere
despite
too.
it like being like what 2 years old at this point.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's amazing when you think about that because um, you know um, no one was really talking about. I mean, I know Dreams by Fleetwood Mac was a popular song, but like no one was really, a couple of people were really mentioning it, and then like boom, like it's like in an Ocean Spray commercial, and suddenly
yeah,
streams for Dreams, also streams for the Cranberry song Dreams, all of a sudden, like that song's like from 93, and like all of a sudden, like it's eclipsing even Zombie. Like,
yeah,
what the hell? And then the biggest, like, what the fuck kind of moment in streaming history, I think, was Boney M from like the 70s, a German group that
yeah,
was popular everywhere else but the United States for some reason. For some reason, now Rasputin is like all over TikTok.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it really goes to show, like, you really never know, like, what could pop off and whether or not that's like a current song or an older song, Like, all it took for what's it called, Fleetwood Mac was just a guy vibing on a skateboard with, ocean spray in his hand.
Cranberry, yeah.
So
Um,
it's like I feel like too, like on that note, like yeah, like focus on like the present, but you never know what from the past could also like become popular. And like, bands like Pierce the Veil, like they had success with that too, with like King for a Day. That got really popular out of nowhere too. But it just again, you never know what's gonna resurge.
yeah. And so like what can you say about the lineup and the chemistry that you guys have now? Do you see this like going for a little while?
So I don't want to jinx myself, so knock on
Okay.
wood. Ultimately, and we've discussed this, like we want to have like a Duran Gray situation where like this lineup is just for the entire band's career. And I think the commonality that brings a lot of us together, sans Paul because Paul hasn't toured yet, is we've been through the industry, various different bands, various different acts and everything, and we've seen the ins and outs. So it's like through trial and error with our previous bands, like we all understand like what we want and what we don't want in all aspects when it comes to writing music, the chemistry in the group, like how we work together too. So we are at this level of maturity now where it's like we know like we don't want to waste each other's time. Like we know we're in it for the long haul. We know and respect each other a lot as musicians. And like the thing is too, like a band is like a marriage, and there's, you know, certain moments where it will inevitably get tense. But I think the great thing about this lineup too is that like everybody always, no matter what, even if we're having like, you know, like disagreements with like, you know, oh well, maybe we should I want to take the song this way, no, we should do it this way, we remind each other, you know, this is nothing but love. You know, we're brothers in this, you know, we love each other. You know, I have great respect for you, and you know, just because this is text, like don't take it to heart, you know, that kind of thing, that kind of consideration that we all have for each other when it comes to doing like the band business.
And I think it really speaks to, you know, what you have now, because you have a path like going forward. Before it was a little rocky, you were a little kind
Yeah.
of unsure, but it really, it's again, like I see these bands like coming together and like meeting people. Like you can't, you gotta see it as like this is a fucking sign, like
Yeah.
something. I can't just meet any old schmo and like convince him to be in my band. Like what if he says no? Like what am I gonna do now? The worst part is if you are kind of getting a feel for each other in a band setting, and then one member or two members, you're busting your ass, and then they're like talking shit behind your back and they're kind of clouding the momentum. And then it's like, guys, like, what the hell? Like, I
You
thought,
know what? I
you
was gonna
know?
say like I've experienced that too with previous bands, but it's like one of those things where I think it just it really is a maturity thing more than anything else. And you know, we're all guys that like, you know, as great and romanticized as it is that like, you know, you could be like a band that's like going out and touring and like this is what you're doing for
Yeah,
your life.
it
Yeah.
really is something that you just can't take for granted because, like, you know, you can easily have, like, you know, been rejected by somebody. And,
Yeah.
like, the fact that you've built, like, this relationship and, like, having a member want to understand you, want to get to know you, want to know like what you like in a band, what you dislike, and how to really create something that can just keep moving
Yeah.
regardless.
And it's definitely a lot easier said than done, no matter what.
Right.
Even like with us, like, you know, we all have day jobs and everything like that, but it's like
Yeah.
I think that sense of responsibility over the years, like, you know, we're all in our what on average, all of us are late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
You know, we've grown up a lot from when we were in our early 20s, you know. So I think it's just that mutual sense of like maturity, responsibility, and the commonality. Like we always, no matter what, we all think individually, we always think of it as what is for the greater good of the band. And we
Yeah.
always try to think of it objectively like that. And I think that's what really serves to our advantage.
Considering the career that you've had thus far and all your bands and Breathe In included, what have you learned about yourself, not only as a musician, but as a person?
There are two things and I'm still a work in progress. I'm nowhere perfect. With all the bands that I've been in, I would say in order for it to effectively move forward, it requires a lot of emotional maturity and patience. But at the same time, too, and this is something I'm also learning, I'm kind of more of an introvert. This interview is totally not a good reflection of that, but you
Yeah,
know, like
yeah, it's a like you work through it, and it's good that you and I could, speak to that
yeah,
because it's not like a one word thing like, hey, music, touring,
yeah.
albums.
And and this is something that I'm learning a lot from Shola because Shola is a straight shooter. Is you have to verbalize your thoughts, even if they are negative or whatever. Like it's better to verbalize it and talk, and you know, come up with a solution. Or you know, like if there's a potential misunderstanding with one of my previous bands, like it got to a point where it was like oil and water, where what half the guys were on this side and half the guys were on this side, and just it was a lot of like speculating and talking behind each other's backs rather than addressing the problems directly. And learning through that, like I'm like, I never want to live through something like that again. We're just like, honestly, I would rather say it and piss you off in the time being than have that well up into something toxic that can potentially be toxic and like blown out of proportion. Because a lot of situations too, when it comes to band dynamics, they are really blown out of proportion. Because you know, when you see a wall of text, like that can be very intimidating and everything. But when you call a person, they're just like, "Oh no, dude! Like you know, I'm just you know." All love and everything. Like I'm just basically stating it as it is. Like there's no sort of like ill intention whatsoever. So like just the nuance of it really does play a huge part.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it's good that they're able to answer the phone, you know, unless they assume you took it poorly and then they're like, nah, fuck you. I don't
Yeah,
want to
exactly.
God. But yeah, it's a learning process, and um you've learned that also, like, just because things get rocky, you're not outed as like some monster and some
Of course.
guy that's like just ruined the whole thing. You're still on, good terms with someone. They still look at you as like, Brian's a good guy,
Yeah,
he
exactly. And I
he
always try
he
to
might
say,
have like messed things up, or we might have like fucked things up a little bit here and there, but at the end of the day, like, he's a good guy.
yeah, and I think the thing that we always like love to remind each other of is that like if anybody's like bent out of shape or whatever, if there's something, it's just like, hey, if they really hated you, they would probably quit the band immediately,
Oh
you know?
god damn.
Yeah. But like, you know, most of it, like we all stick it through and everything. And like, you know, after any sort of, you know, potential argument or anything, like we resolve it. And it, you know, we show like it's through actions, you know, the actions really speak louder than words. And just being in a band together, it's just like a relationship where it's like by being in that relationship and choosing to continue to fight forward, despite the good and the bad, they know your partners know, or your for the band it would be partners, for the relationship partner they know you're in it, you know, they know that you care and you're invested, and I think that's the most important thing.
Lastly, is there
Mm-hmm.
anything you'd like to say to your fans?
um well, first of all, thank you guys for all the love and support. I know that we are still, you know, trying to find our way and slowly building up, but every little stream, every little watch on our YouTube video, and all the support here and there really means the world for us. Please check out our new single, Misfortune's Hand. It is out now on all streaming platforms, and the music video is on YouTube. And be on the lookout for new material next year.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we had this interview, man. Like,
Absolutely. It was a pleasure, dude. And I mean, the interview was just an overall, like, it was such a fun experience, man. Like, you're really easy to talk to. Like, it just felt like two friends having a conversation, you know, and this was just a vibe. And, you know, I'm more than down to do another interview in the future.
oh, hell yeah, man.
Yeah. And I'll also tell Nick you said hi.
Oh, goddamn. Yeah, I will.